analysis, and then we're going to have a 15-minute discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and hopefully I will contribute to your practices. Standard meta-analysis are better, more advantages. Yes, they have some risks, but when we think of the pros of standard meta-analysis, such risks can be negligible. Classicals are classical. Classicals have survived time, but the new things also are created because of a need, and network meta-analysis are the new things, and network meta-analysis also help us solving some problems that we cannot solve with standard meta-analysis. Think of two cars. One is more luxurious, more comfortable, and therefore more costly. The traffic insurance, maintenance costs are higher, and if you're involved in a car accident, then it is even more costly, and the fuel costs more because the engine is bigger. However, in that car you feel safer or more comfortable. So standard meta-analysis are based on dual comparisons, and I believe that network meta-analysis have some more advantages. Of course, there's this problem of combining data. Think of meta-analysis as a basket. So we put different fruits in it. We add apples with oranges, but the result might be so different than an apple or an orange. And there will be some methodological problems, serious problems. This is a general problem with meta-analysis. So it happens in everything when you combine different variables. So the basic problem that lies here is valid for both methods. In classical dual meta-analysis, yes, we make a comparison on the basis of the knowledge we have, and we compare it with a placebo or another efficacious method. And sometimes we do simple indirect comparison. So we take a common comparator and we compare the drug, for example, with that comparator. There are regression analysis as well. If the variables in the treatment effects are heterogeneous, then such regression analysis is carried out. Network meta-analysis can be done by the combination of direct results of these meta-analysis. So network meta-analysis is also called the multiple treatment analysis, or indirect treatment analysis, or mixed treatment comparison. So when you see these three different terms, you should think that they are all referring to network meta-analysis. For the same disease, different treatment options are used, and the results of each treatment option are compared with one another in a network analysis. A and B, B and C, and A and C are compared. But sometimes it's not possible to do it most of the time. The comparison is made with placebo, so indirectly. If there is a comparison between A and B, and if A is superior to B, if it's safer or more efficacious than B, and if we make a comparison between C and B for the same disease, and if B is superior, since A is superior than B in the first comparison, then although there is no comparison between A and C, A seems to be the most superior one. According to standard meta-analysis, network meta-analysis are more reliable and give us definite answers. They give us definite answers and results in evaluating the actual situation. Let me give you some examples. This is placebo. Think of it as A as a third alternative, or here placebo. If there is no direct comparison between B and C, and if the comparisons have been made between B and placebo and C and placebo, then you can indirectly make a comparison between B and C. When you combine these arrows, or if there are direct evidence, then the relationship between A, B and C can be compared, but sometimes you cannot. Classical meta-analysis tries to find out whether A is superior to B. However, there might be other alternatives in addition to A and B. And if there are multiple alternatives, and more importantly, if there has never been a comparison between these alternatives, how are we going to make a decision? For instance, F and D, F versus D, or E versus F. There is no comparison there, and therefore our network analysis, meta-analysis, will give us information about such treatments, assumptions. Of course, statistics is anticipation, it's prediction. Based on the results of your study, you try to predict the actual situation. And naturally, prediction is always open or prone to mistakes. And the aim here is to control the factors that might affect the outcome and to prevent irreversible mistakes and to minimize coincidental mistakes. So from this perspective, coincidental mistakes, such as statistical mistakes, might be seen in other meta-analysis as well. So such network meta-analysis are better in terms of such coincidental mistakes. You see, this is a network in the shape of a star network, or a single closed loop when, as you see, there is a direct relationship between A and B and C, or connected network, again interrelated with one another, but mostly we are generally talking about complex networks, where the results that have no connection with one another are there. There is this thing called network geometry. The study is this network geometry is a visual aid to see the relationship between different variables. So it enables us to make an evaluation of a general result, and this prevents us from ignoring some of the findings or overrating some findings. So this is an example. Notes here, you see, the size, this is the size of the trials, number of samples, etc., or the level of evidence. So when you look at the arrows here, you see how many trials there are between warfarin and aspirin. So there are 7 trials comparing warfarin and aspirin, and we also see how many trials we have that compare these 2 drugs, and this visual network, this visual geometry is really helpful for us. And this is placebo. Placebo is big because the number of trials with placebo is the highest. In many studies, placebo is used, therefore the size of placebo is really big, and the size can be proportional to number of studies, number of patients, mean age of participants in studies, price of the drug, etc. So with such a visual aid, we can see the number of trials carried out with drugs, or how many trials have been carried out with which drug. So it gives us an opinion, it gives an idea about the size of the trials. And this is another publication by Luft in Lancet. You see, when it's bolder, the lines are bolder, it also refers to the level of evidence, or it gives us the chance to make an evaluation of possible bias. Network meta-analyses are stronger or more powerful than standard meta-analysis, because the sample size is bigger, and even though indirectly there are comparisons with other variables as well. However, if there is an ambiguity with these networks, this should not be ignored. So it says, so we can say that there is always the chance to make a mistake with network meta-analysis, but it might give you clues as regards the interpretation of results. Therefore, it paves the way for further or advanced trials. Heterogeneity or inconsistency, these are also important. This is important for us to understand whether the result is real. Differences in methodology, design of the research, the populations in research, I mean, if there are these similar groups, environment, description of results and measurements, follow-up periods, if there's this similar, I mean, if there's dissimilarities in terms of such parameters, and if these are not taken into account, these will have an effect on results. But we have the same problems with standard meta-analysis. It's not specific to network meta-analysis. Yes, we're comparing A and B, but also A and C is compared, so we can have an idea of the relationship between B and C. To think of it as depression, you're making a comparison on patients with mild depression. However, you also make a comparison on severe depression while comparing A and C. So if there is not a similarity between patient populations, then the indirect result of comparison between B and C will be misleading if the patient groups are different. So ignoring statistical heterogeneity, incoherence in conceptual heterogeneity, these all have negative impacts on the result of the network meta-analysis, but these are not specific to network meta-analysis. The more trials you pool, the more costly it will be, like driving luxurious car. Network meta-analysis is a new and strong tool to combine evidences, because if you look at dual comparisons, you can find the difference between the effects of two antidepressants in a very long time. However, with network meta-analysis, it takes shorter. Let's say you're going to compare 12 antidepressants. To conclude such studies will take years, but if you carry out network meta-analysis, you can get results in a shorter time period. and you can make this efficacy comparison more quickly. And you also can see the whole picture. When you compare two drugs, then you can only speak about those two compared drugs. However, when there is pooled comparison, then you can compare multiple factors. By combining direct and indirect evidence, you increase the accuracy of prediction, because when you compare direct and indirect evidence, you work with a bigger sample, and this means that you have a narrower confidence interval, and it also gives you the chance to make a prioritization of treatment options. It gives you which one is superior, which one is more disadvantageous in terms of adverse effects, etc. So let's look here at this slide. You have 4 minutes. Professor Ayşegül also showed a similar slide. You will see the difference here. If it's bold and underlined, this means that these results are statistically significant. So the results we have are statistically significant. And also it gives you a ranking of treatments. The best, second best, and third best treatment options can be listed with this network meta-analysis. You can see which one is the best. For instance, in this comparison, epinephrine is around 70%. So among all these agents, it's the best. Or the alternatives at the bottom of the slide are not really efficacious. And both in terms of efficacy and acceptability of the drug, you can see where the drug is positioned. So you see the first, third, or fifth treatment of choice. You can see the adverse effects and efficacy. You have 12 alternatives to choose from, let's say, and you can have this visual aid. If you look at the curves here, the dotted curves show you the acceptability, the other curve shows you efficacy. The closer it is, escitalopram, for instance, or venlafaxine, they seem to be the best in terms of efficacy. And similarly, in this trial, you see the pros and cons of various drugs, or you see whether some of them are an alternative to another treatment, and you see the size of the trial and number of trials, etc. So it's visually helping you to understand what has been compared with what, and then you see the pros and cons of each agent versus the other. The bold ones are statistically significant results. So these are not coincidental efficacy values. So if you rely on something, then you continue using it, and network meta-analysis became more popular after 1990s, but in the beginning of 1900s, network meta-analysis, I mean, it goes back to 1960s, but there is a significant increase with 1990s, and when you look at network meta-analysis in 2014 in PubMed, there are more than 400 articles mentioning network meta-analysis in PubMed. So the network meta-analysis is increasing gradually. In Network meta-analysis enables the researcher to visually see the results of various treatment methods that were used for the same disease, and it also enables the researcher to observe and combine various results from different studies, and similarly heterogeneity and consistency information give us information about what to focus on. And finally, if we do not take into account these points which might lead to mistakes, we can come up with wrong results, or we can make connections between two agents that should not be connected at all. But network meta-analysis is significantly superior to standard meta-analysis. Thank you for your patience.